time for our next keynote. That is Connected Planet, our net zero commitment. And let's welcome back Marientina Laina, Global Head of Sustainability, NTT GDC at NTT. Hello, welcome back to the stage.
Hello, hi, I'm glad to be back.
Very good to see you. Well, I will say, as ever, the virtual floor is yours.
Great, thank you. So, can you see my screen, my presentation? Okay, great. So, hello everyone. Welcome to our presentation on our net zero commitment, a program that is very important for global NTT global data centers, but also very close to my heart. As I said, this is quite focusing on our net zero commitment. Obviously, our program goes beyond that. But before I actually start talking about our program, I would like to say a couple of things about our business. So NTT Global Data Centers, as you can see, we are a truly global organization with presence in more than 20 countries. I think that what makes us unique right now is our global presence, our rapid rate of growth. As you can see right now, we have plans of expansion that go beyond 700 megawatt. We operate across 4 different regions. But beyond that, we are actually proud to say that we are a global firm with local capabilities as well. And beyond beyond being a data center operator, we are able to help our clients throughout their digital transformation. So hopefully that paints a picture about the size of our business, but also the size of our challenge as well when it comes to achieving our net zero commitment and our decarbonization program. So just to put things a little bit into perspective, I would like to say a couple of words about our key sustainability themes here. NTT Global Data Centers, we are part of NTT Limited, all part of the broader NTT family. And as such, we actually have 3 sustainability themes. The first one, Connected Planet, which really is what our net zero commitment falls. And it is about reducing emissions, reducing our emissions from our operations, but also across our value chain. Then there is a part around connected economy, and how do we make sure that in a rapidly changing world, we provide more and more services in order to help our clients in their own digital transformation for a resilient and sustainable future. And then last but not least, connected communities, which focuses on playing a role in the communities that we operate in, but also accelerating our program around diversity, equity, and inclusion. So, as mentioned in the beginning, our climate impact and everything around that falls under our Connected Planet commitment. And I'm really excited to be talking to you about this commitment today. So, NTT Global Data Centers, we have committed to reduce at least 42% of our total greenhouse gas emissions by 2030 and at least 90% by 2040. We will put things a little bit more, let's say, we'll paint the picture in a bit more detail when it comes to, the definitions of scope, because I appreciate that and sustainability, and when making such a net zero, such a commitment, not everyone might be so familiar with the details. So we want to make sure that we are understood, as that also helps communicating the level of our ambition that is behind all of that. So we are setting this commitment for 2030 milestone year and also 2040 as the final year, in line with the Science-Based Target Initiative's criteria. And right now, we're going through the validation process. And after that process is complete and we have that external validation plan, validation stamp, we will be among these companies that have managed to have that external third-party validation and acceptance for this ambition. So here, as you can see, we say that by 2030, we are looking at reducing emissions from our operations, scope 1 and 2 emissions, by at least 90%. And we're using as a baseline year FY21. At the same time, we're also looking at reducing by at least 42% emissions across our value chain. And that includes both emissions from our suppliers, so upstream, but also emissions from our clients. And sustainability, and more importantly, this commitment is an area that we are looking at engaging both with our upstream suppliers and our downstream part of our value chain and clients as well. And then the end year for this is 2040, where we are looking at reducing our total emissions by 90%. As mentioned before, we would like to provide a little bit more detail about what that Scope 1 and Scope 2 emissions really are about. And for that reason, it is important to help you understand what that really entails. So in our program, we have been, even though it is not a program that has been around for a very long time, I think that what our thinking is to accelerate efforts, and we right now set a commitment that goes across all scopes. So for our operations, scope 1 emissions, which is really about our direct emissions, and that is about emissions from our backup power generators, well, diesel, but also emissions from our vehicles and fugitive emissions from refrigerants. At the same time, we also have our scope 2 emissions, so emissions from the so-called electricity, which focus quite a lot on our non-IT load. So here you will see what we're encompassing are emissions, non-IT, power consumption, lighting, power distribution, UPS, but also cooling. So as mentioned before, by 2030, we want to reduce scope 1 and 2 emissions by 90%. But also, it is important to make sure that we're quite clear about what our commitment encompasses in terms of value chain and scope 3 emissions. So for our value chain emissions here, as you can see, a big part of it, a very material part of it, are emissions that are linked to power used by our clients' IT equipment. So that's the IT load, but also emissions from our offices, data center facilities, but also aspects such as business travel, employee commute, and all that, that even though they might not be as material, they're still part of our baseline and areas that we're focused on. So here, as mentioned before, for our scope 3 emissions, by 2030, we're looking at reducing them by 42%, and by 2040, which is our end year, by 90%. So hopefully that paints a picture about what this commitment entails, and how we're basically what our plans are in terms of milestones. But at this point, we would like actually to go into a bit more detail, appreciating that this is not a really long session, and from our point of view, we'll be talking about that for a really long time, because there's quite a lot of work that goes behind that. But hopefully the next slide will provide you with a little bit more, albeit high level, still a bit more information about how we're working towards meeting this commitment. So here, even though this graph is illustrative, you can see, let's say, our carbon trajectory on a business as usual case, which is a light blue like dotted line, and then our net zero trajectory. So what we are, and appreciating that that is illustrative, what we're really trying to say here is that right now, how are we really going about meeting our net zero commitment and achieving this very ambitious decarbonization? At first place, we have established a program that consists of a number of work streams that includes renewable energy for our operations, but also for the IT load as well. Efficiency, because of course, before we reduce, we want to make sure that we are efficient as we can. Sustainable delivery, which is really about addressing embodied carbon from capital goods and also purchased goods and services. But at the same time, also, how do we work with our clients and also with our suppliers, making sure that we are all on the same sustainability journey. And last but not least, there is quite a lot of focus on reporting as well. So how do we make sure that over the course of time, we use more and more granular information for reporting our progress, and we are transparent towards key internal and importantly external stakeholders that would like to understand in more detail about how we are moving forward towards meeting this commitment. So here again, when it comes to, let's say, our milestone here for 2030, we are focusing quite a bit on, let's say, decarbonizing through prioritizing the uptake of accelerating the use of renewables, but also at the same time, quite a lot of focus on operational efficiency for our existing data centers, but making sure that our new data centers are in line with leading sustainable design practice. So you can also see that we also have our commitment to be to achieve 100% renewable energy in all our data centers by 2030. So appreciating that, if we look at our footprint, power is the most material part of that. We're getting started with that, of course, but that does not, while at the same time we're setting everything else up, but that does not mean that we are not mindful of our other hotspots, and we're not working internally and with suppliers and clients to get there either. And as you can see, by between 2030 and 2040, these are the efforts that we are further using for scaling up ambition, working more and more closely with our clients, who in most cases already have their own sustainability commitments. So it is really about working together, but also leveraging co-benefits from technology, sustainable delivery, innovation, and also other synergies that right now it might be a little bit too early to identify, but at the same time we know that over the course of time there is going to be, let's just say that right now there is that far that we can plan for such a long-term commitment, but at the same time we know that as we work more and more together with our internal team and externally, the more we're going to be able to leverage on the benefits that come from that. I think it is also important to mention that as a global business, that's not just something that is a high-level commitment that, let's say, we are looking at delivering in due course, because even setting up this program is quite a challenge itself. It is a commitment that actually we are already underpinning with good practice across our data centers. For example, in our new data center in South Africa that recently went online, it actually uses cloud loop chilled water system with air-cooled chillers, and that actually means that in practice means that water that is running through the system is not evaporated, so that is an efficiency there. But also in the spirit of good practice as well, definitely worth mentioning is practice from India as well, where we have recently deployed liquid immersion cooling and direct contact liquid cooling technologies, which has contributed to increasing efficiency up to 30%. And last but not least, another case, a little bit different, but again, something that we are very proud of is what we're doing in Berlin too, where through working with partners, we're launching a project about using waste heat for district heating. Right now, we understand that that is the largest project in Germany for reuse of waste heat for district heating, and that's something that again it has, let's say, a sustainability co-benefit, but also, just like it always happens, sustainability is not just about the environmental, but also about looking at the social impact that has, and other co-benefits as well. So I'm mentioning these examples in line with a very ambitious power procurement, but also on-site generation plans and exploration for increasing the uptake of renewables. Just some, let's say, some highlights when it comes to our efforts to increase efficiency, innovation in order to accelerate decarbonization. So at this point, I have concluded with my presentation, and what I would like to provide to you as context for this ambitious commitment, and I would like to get some questions.
I have some questions for you. Well timed that. So for you, where does NTT believe you can have the biggest impact?
Mm-hmm. Yes, so NTT, NTT GDC, we are part of the NTT family, obviously. We right now talk about our data centers, and looking at our impact right now, the most material area of it is power. And that is why this has been a priority for us. So we're definitely looking at the materiality of that and working for, let's say, addressing that from our operations perspective, but also further engaging with our clients for that. But beyond that, as mentioned at the beginning of my presentation, we're quite mindful of the fact that it's not just about data center operators and power. It is also about the role that we can play in a world where we help our clients with digital services that we provide for their own transformation and having a positive impact in our communities as well.
Because you were talking at times there about the ambitions that are being set out, the aims. How important, though, is it to make sure you don't just have those ambitions and aims, but you track them accurately, fairly, and are very honest with yourself about how you're doing in relation to them?
Yes, yeah, well, that's a great question. That's why before what I was saying was that setting up this program and setting it up and running, getting the buy-in, stakeholder engagement, establishing the KPIs is already, let's say, a milestone, because as you say, it is really important. What we want to do and what we are doing and planning to continue doing more and more is we want to report in line with frameworks that right now constitute leading practice. That is why, for example, right now, when it comes to our emissions, we are going through an external validation assurance exercise, and that is the first time that we are doing that. And that's just another way to confirm to the world that it is not just, let's say, something that we're doing and we're choosing how to report on. We are actually choosing to report based on leading practice, but at the same time, beyond, let's say, our carbon footprint and emissions, we are looking at establishing more and more KPIs beyond, let's say, our connected planet commitment that are going to become, over the course of time, part of the reports that we are publishing as well. So it is a journey. Reporting is always a journey, and what we have done is that we have listened to our external stakeholders that are, interested in more and more information for that, and that's what we're looking at doing too.
So it sounds very much like it's all hardwired directly into the business. It isn't a bolt-on. It isn't an add-on. Is that the approach? No. And what advice would you give to others about making it the culture within their organisation too? Because I guess that's the overall aim, isn't it?
Yes, definitely. That is the aim. And from our point of view, that has been the focus to begin with. Like, how do we make sure it's not a reporting exercise, as you said? How do we make sure that our people are being recognized for their contribution? Because typically what one sees is that when things get started, everyone thinks that sustainability is something extra that they do. But actually, sustainability is having a transformative impact in the way that we operate and we do business as well. So we're getting increasingly prepared for that. What I would advise other businesses in that sense is that to actually look at sustainability not as a financial burden, but as an opportunity to enhance resilience and, in the end of the day, to remain relevant. And the way that one can do that is through two ways. The positive part of that is to start with smaller steps, but also get started and celebrate wins, because the way is really long, and I know firsthand that it can feel as if, like, where is the end of this? Like, how do we actually feel that, some joy and recognition for that? So do definitely celebrate wins, but also be a little bit mindful of the cost of inaction as well. If you don't do this today, if this is a kind that we kick down the road for next year or the year after, what is that going to mean in the way that you work with your clients, your suppliers, respond to regulatory requirements, and in the way, and also in many ways, how do you remain relevant and retain, let's say, the license to operate? So I think that these are some considerations for those that are looking at also establishing and scaling up action when it comes to net zero and climate ambition.
And that leads on me very nicely to my last question, because people know from these events I do like to give people tangible, useful information to take away. Well, I certainly try to. What would your advice be for anyone who's having to go and make a business case for sustainability internally? How do you go about making that case when the company culture might be more about performance? It might be more about capacity. There might be other variables that's a higher priority. What advice would you give on actually making that business case internally?
Yes, well, that's really the million dollar question. And that is why, for responding to this question, we need to look at ourselves, but also we need to look at, let's say, externally as well. It is very important to recognize that we work in a very competitive business industry right now. So definitely it always helps discussions with the leadership when we are able to say that this is something that we need to do right now. We're looking at what our peers are doing. But at the same time, the role of clients in this industry as well is very, very pertinent. For us as a data center operation, organizations that are our biggest clients, they have been quite vocal about their own commitments when it comes to sustainability and tackling climate change. And those commitments mean quite a lot to us. And that's a common denominator. Those two are two common denominators, because I also appreciate that regulation can be a driver, but it can actually be very different from region to region as well. And also options around, market instruments when it comes to power procurement as well. So yeah, I think that two important aspects for making the business case definitely is, well, let's look at ourselves and our industry as well. Let's also consider what our clients are asking us to do. But also, it is very important when putting together a sustainability budget or plan for, let's say, the different items that are listed in there, to have even high level and qualitative, because we are not in a position to always have very granular information here. Always have an idea about what is the return on investment that we'll be looking at, right? And if one is able to build the narrative around that, I think that then the chances to, establish acceptance and consensus wouldn't be bad at all.
Sound advice, Marientina. Thank you so much for your time here at Data Center Live London. Really enjoyed your company. Thank you.
Thank you very much.